Welcome to freedomlovin.com, where we focus on building freedom in an unfree world. Through personal development, location independence, and passive income strategies. Now here's your host, Kevin Koskela.
All right, welcome to Freedom Lovin'. This is Kevin, and this is episode number 50. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you listening in, and I have in just a minute an interview with Ben Altman of CharismaOnCommand.com, and it was a really fun interview to do. We talked about running a business on the road, how to use charisma in talking to girls and other humans. And we also talked a little bit about travel around the U.S. and travel abroad. So stay tuned for that in just a minute. Just a few things to cover today. I'm going to be wrapping up, actually, I think, my SEO writing business that I started back on May 15th. And so if you haven't listened to this podcast, I'm doing 6 businesses in 12 months, and I'm doing that from 3 locations. So business number 1 was SEO writing, and I'm still doing it, and I'm helping out a friend with some articles, and it's been an absolute blast. I love it. It does take some time, but it's working well with my schedule. I think with what he's looking for, it may not actually work. Even if I wanted to continue, I'm not sure that it's the perfect fit for him, because the way my schedule works is I have to kind of spread the articles out, so I can't do like a whole bunch of them at once. So, but he's needing that like once a week. So I'm not really sure what exactly is going to happen there, but I think we'll probably call it quits in the next week or so. But one thing that I've learned from doing all these articles and doing SEO writing is that I do love writing. Most articles I really enjoy writing. Some I have to do a lot more research than others, and that's where I'm not as big on the research, but it is fun learning about new things, and yeah, absolutely a good time. And the other thing is the feeling of accomplishment after finishing an article is something that I really like. I really feel like I've done something. If I wrote an article, finished it, hit the save button, that is a nice feeling. And so I don't really get that with a lot of other parts of my work, because the other things that I'm working on with marketing and advertising and things, it's always kind of like an open loop left open. So it never seems like it's done, but with an article, you write it, you're done. So I would definitely recommend, if you have not done any kind of work online, to look into the SEO writing. And I think my next business, it looks like I'm about 90% leaning towards doing sales copy. So that means any kind of sales copy. I've done this in the past. I have several websites. I've had several websites as well, and I've done a lot of sales copy. And I think I'm pretty good at it. I don't think I'm in the top tier and can charge like, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 for a sales letter. That's pretty much what the top guys charge. But I have had success in information products and a few other areas. And I have samples. I've got everything I need to really do well at sales copy and for other people. So that's the idea, is that I'm going to be doing it as a service. So if you do need sales copy yourself, let me know, because I can show you what I've done, and if it's a good fit, we can go from there. I actually already have put together some forms that I have clients fill out. So part of what I do is I work with partners and work with them on their information products. And so we already have a whole system. My partner and I have a whole system where we get answers to several questions, then we put together the sales letter from those answers. So this is something that I've done in the past. I've been doing it. I'm still doing it kind of on a regular basis. Right now, it's not specifically my focus on my businesses, but it is off and on. That is definitely something that I work on. So sales copy is looking good for the next thing. And it's looking like, as far as my location goes, I'm still in Austin. I am looking at staying here throughout the end of August. I have an apartment that I'm not crazy about, and the lease actually ends on July 31st. And the guy that I'm renting from actually said I could stay all the way to August, I think, 19th. But I'm not that happy here. It's kind of loud, which is something I didn't expect. And so I think what I'm going to do is try to get a place for a month in Austin before I head out. And I think then it's time to go to San Diego, because I have some things going on there. And then that will be my second city of this 6-city tour, or the 3-city tour. And I've got ideas on where I want to head in the winter, or at least like maybe November, December-ish. So I'm not going to reveal them yet, but I'll talk about that in a future episode. In the next episode, I'll have another Ben on the show, and we're going to talk about how to start a writing business online. So it fits perfectly in what I've been doing, and how to really get going and start something that you can do within 48 hours. You can have your business up and running and making your first dollar. So that's pretty awesome. I mean, even if you're absolutely after passive income, it's still an amazing way to get started, because you can just start earning that money right away. As long as you put in the time, you'll have some dollars coming in. We'll talk about that on the next show. And the last thing is I am looking at doing some different kinds of podcasts, and I wanted to get some feedback. So I'm looking at doing like a curation show, and this is part of Freedom Lovin'. So I listen to a lot of podcasts, and most of them have something to do with freedom, or at least like self-improvement. And what I'm thinking about doing is doing a show maybe once every other week, or maybe even every week, of curation. So I just take little clips of maybe 3 or 4 podcasts that I've listened to during the week, and then provide a little commentary on them. And it'll be sort of a summary of what I think are the important things. So let me know what you think about that. I think I might even try experimenting with that next week when I have a little bit more time, and see how that goes. It's going to be a little bit more in terms of production and getting the files and everything like that, but that would be kind of fun, and I think it might be helpful to a lot of people. So without further delay, have a great week. Go out there and build some freedom, and here's my interview with Ben Altman. All right. Well, I'm excited to have Ben Altman on the show today. His website is charismaoncommand.com. Hey, Ben, welcome to Freedom Lovin'.
Hey, thanks, brother. Good to be here.
Yeah. So what's your background? I know a little bit about you from, kind of Dynamite Circle, and, I know you're obviously location independent. You're kind of traveling across the country right now. But how did you get started with all this, and how did you actually, end up where you are?
Yeah, for sure. So my background, I think there's like a classic entrepreneurial prototype that is this, which is like I went to business school, then I went to investment banking, decided that wasn't for me. I decided I was tired of sleeping under my desk and pulling all-nighters. So I was like, I'll go into private equity, which is way more, interesting. And the people I worked at both firms were awesome. But it turns out you still are sleeping under your desk at times, and you're grinding. And the job is like interesting, fast-paced, like a lot of upside, but you're ultimately like you're working for someone else the hours they ask you to. So at the end of my 2-year contract in private equity, I just decided like I needed to get out. And so me and a buddy of mine planned to kind of escape the corporate world together, go live abroad and start a business. And so that was it really. And like when we left, we definitely didn't do the like build a side project till you have enough money to support yourself.
Yeah.
We kind of just said, hey, we'll move to Brazil, and then we'll have to start a business or we'll starve. So like we did a little bit of groundwork beforehand, but really we got there, and that was when I kind of dove in and started full time on Charisma on Command, and was in Brazil for a year. It was amazing, and then just got back to the U.S. like 2 weeks ago.
So you had no idea what you were going to do when you headed down to Brazil? You're just like, I just want to start some kind of business?
I had ideas, which as you and anyone listening who owns a business knows, like ideas are worthless, right? So I had ideas, and one was to do this kind of like personal development based business around charisma. One was to become like a giant party thrower for the World Cup. One was to host gringos with like a VIP service. So I went down there and like really kind of just looked around and tried to see like what were the opportunities. And I actually didn't find any of the Brazil-based things to be what I was looking for. Yeah. So very quickly did just hone in on, okay, it's going to be Charisma on Command, and it's going to be something I can do from anywhere. And yeah, we weren't really clear on that until maybe month 2.
Okay. Cool. So how did you get interested in that? Like, what was that kind of your background? Like, did you see kind of a need out there that needed to be met, or?
Charisma on Command is actually not my first entrepreneurial endeavor. I have a business, I don't even know if you can find it on Google anymore, called BCX Parkour, which hopefully is shut down. But definitely please don't buy, because we don't have the infrastructure set up anymore. But yeah, so I started this business, and it was straight out of like Tim Ferriss' 4-Hour Workweek. Just followed the playbook. DVD fulfillment company for how to learn parkour. And we did that because we found a niche. It wasn't competitive. It was awesome, blah, blah, blah. But the business just didn't take off. And I thought at the time it was because it wasn't something I cared about.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure for this next one that it was something I cared about, that I would want to kind of put time and effort into. And for me, like the biggest thing, one of at least the biggest things that's had a positive impact on my life has been focusing on this area, like working on how to be good with people, human psychology, what makes people tick, how do you, captivate a room, become a powerful speaker. And I just saw my own personal life like transform. So I decided that I'd write a business that was just all about that. So we started with just a blog and just writing and seeing if anyone cared to read what we had to say. And we kind of went from there. But yeah, we picked it because it was the one thing I was already reading about and talking about anyway. So I figured I might as well try to make money off of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how then, and what is exactly, can you describe Charisma on Command? Like, what do you guys do? Do you offer a coaching service or?
Yeah, for sure. In its current form, and it's definitely evolved, over the last 10 months or 11 months. It is a bunch of free content on the blog, YouTube videos, and things like that. And then from there, we have a book, or 2 books now, a couple video courses. We're going to come out with 6 more probably by the end of summer. They're all kind of in process. And then group coaching. So we have this thing called Charisma University that is 25 people. It's set up exactly like a university. You get materials, lectures, office hours, and it's really, obviously it doesn't cost $40,000 a year like a private university does, but it's modeling that education system. And then at the highest end, we have our private coaching for people that really want like one-on-one to kind of, get this handled as quickly as they can. And what it is we actually teach is just how do you be super charismatic? How do you get next level charismatic where you can turn it on when you want and be that guy that kind of draws other people to you, and you have that social life you want, you have the mentors you want, sales are easy, negotiating is easy. It's just kind of all those areas in your life where you need to be at your best. Most people feel outside their comfort zone and they kind of shrink, and we're all about just being clutch in those moments.
Yeah, and it's like everybody can use that. Everybody needs that. So that's awesome. So now I read one of your blog posts. It was how never run out of things to say, or how to never run out of things to say. And I thought that was cool. It's like you always get, everyone gets in those situations where you're like, okay, what do I say next?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have like a few tips in that area, like that you can give out, like 3 tips on how to not run out of things to say?
Sure, yeah. I'll go short answer because I could talk about this for like hours.
Okay.
And then if you just tell me if you want me to expand or not. But 3 tips. So I'd say the first one, the biggest thing, is just having freedom of words. Basically, anytime someone says, I didn't know what to say, the truth is that person had a thought in their head, and they just decided that thought wasn't good enough to share with the world. And if I could give people one gift, it would be like, tap you on the head, you have freedom of words. Because the truth is, if you look at any good comedian, look at Russell Brand or Will Smith, they're amazingly charismatic. But it's not like every single thing they say is like lights out funny. They just give a lot. They speak and they talk. And so they don't do one-word answers. And what that does is it gives the person that you're speaking to, it gives them almost ammunition to continue the conversation. So this kind of bleeds into my number 2, which is like, that you're going to get asked 3 to 5 of the same questions in every single conversation, right? It's like, where are you from? What do you do? What did you do before that? Where do you live? You're going to get them.
Yep.
So nail those questions. That's like the 80-20. Nail the easy stuff. No one-word answers. If someone asks me where I'm from, I'm not just going to be like, oh, I'm from Philly. Now, I'm also not going to ramble on and on and on and on and on about every single thing I've done since birth.
Yeah.
But I would say something like, I was actually born in the Northeast, but I didn't really jive with that culture. It's like not for me. So I've been traveling for the last year in Brazil, which is way more my style. And the people there are way more like the people I like to be around. And I just moved back to the U.S. about 2 weeks ago. And it just gives you enough open loops in the conversation where you could ask, why don't I like the Northeast? Why did I go to Brazil? What was I doing in Brazil? Why did I leave Brazil? Where am I in the U.S.? Like, if you have any interest in me at all as a human, that conversation will flow. Yeah. And if you don't ask a question, then I know I've done something terribly wrong before this that's just made you not give. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this, so I'll just stop with that. But not care.
Yeah, no, that's funny because it's like anyone that's kind of living this sort of lifestyle, location independent, and running a business on the road and things like that. If you said what you just said to somebody and they didn't have a follow-up question, I would think there's got to be something wrong with them. Like, how could you not be interested? How could you not follow up with something?
Exactly. If you give that answer to where are you from, and you give the 30-second, and again, don't ramble, but the 30-second, like, here's a little bit about me and what I've done and why I've done what I've done, and they don't ask you, like, any follow-up questions, go replay the first 2 minutes of that conversation in your head because something has gone awry.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that would be my number 2 for sure. And then 3 is ask good questions. People, like, they'll get in these conversations. It's like, where are you from? Philly. Where are you from? California. Oh, that's cool. I know a guy from California. Is it this guy? Oh, no, sorry. There's like a billion people in this state. I don't know that guy. Oh, that's okay. What do you do? Like, it's these harsh transitions, boring questions. I would say take genuine curiosity in who you're talking to and get curious about why they've done what they've done. So a lot of people ask what? What do you do? What do you do this? What do you that? Why do you that? Ask why, because that's how you really learn about them. And that's what people really want to talk about. And if you can get them talking, especially about things that they like and why they like those things and why they've done those things, people will go on forever talking about the stuff they like. So you should never run out of things to say as long as you have interesting answers that give enough material to the other person that they can just ask these alley-oop follow-ups. And then on your end, you're asking, what did you like about it? Why did you like it? Why did you do it? You can have those first 2 minutes of conversation turn into an hour of like really incredible conversation because you're getting to the core of who you are instead of just giving your resume to each other.
Yeah, that's awesome stuff. I went to a networking meetup here when I first got to Austin about a month ago, and I wasn't really going to it. It was a work thing. Like everybody was there to exchange business cards and try to find clients and all that. I was just going to meet people. I had no interest in doing business with anybody. So like people, of course, in that situation, they always ask you, of course, what do you do? Like that's the first thing. And so instead of, for me, even if I told them what I did, it's kind of like nobody really understands it. So I just would say stuff like, I'm a full-time traveler. And then it sort of starts the conversation off. So it's a much more interesting conversation than if it's like I'm an accountant or I'm a doctor or whatever. Things like that I think are really good in terms of connecting with people. Because I made so many connections that night that I don't think anyone else was getting. Everybody else is like, oh, I got 10 business cards or whatever. And, that's so.
Yeah, and what's beautiful about that too is like everybody feels like they need to get to like you ask a question, you need to like get to the core of the answer right away, right? So it's like, what do you do? Oh, I'm like a full-time world traveler. It's not actually answering the question of how do you make money.
Yeah.
It's not a test, right? No one is going to score you on like, well, did you fully answer the question as asked? It's like, no, I'm trying to start a dynamic conversation where both parties are interested, right? And by giving that answer, you basically beg a follow-up question. And they're going to ask you whatever interests them most. They could say, oh, well, like, how do you support it? Or, oh, like, where have you traveled? Or, oh, why are you in Austin? And they get kind of to pick their own adventure. But whatever they ask, that's going to interest them because they've gotten to choose it. Versus if you were to just say, oh, I'm so like when I was back in private equity, I wouldn't just say like, oh, I'm in private equity. I'd say like why, or if I was leaving or if I was staying, and I'd make it something where the person could show any interest.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you give an example of like going to a bar, like trying to meet a girl, and everybody's kind of saying the same thing? And so like, what would you do in that situation where, you've got all these guys that are like, hey, where are you from? And, that kind of thing.
This is kind of the away from the 80-20, I guess, of like the easy stuff. But I'm super playful when it's social. If it's work, networking, things like that, I'll say, so like, what do you do? And then they'll say it. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Why do you do it? But if I'm in a bar, guy or girl, I'm being playful. I'm joking. Yeah. Someone asks me what I do, I'm going to tell them that I'm something absurd. Like I'm going to say I'm a stripper or like a race car driver or something. I would never say anything that's believable. Like I wouldn't say, oh, I manage a hedge fund, which some guys will do just because they want them to think they have money. But I go playful. So if you look at my conversations when I'm in super social, relaxed settings, it's like nonsensical. It is all about just having fun. And the best mindset I could give you for that is just whatever makes you laugh, whatever makes you have fun. Like I could give you the word for word. And like a lot of times with our clients, we'll give them stuff to kind of start them out so that they have some training wheels, because then they can build the mindsets without being terrified that they're going to like go out there and bomb. But for people listening, I would just say like, say stuff that entertains you and that's funny to you. So if someone asks you what you do, you think it's funny to say you're a stripper, say you're a stripper. You think it's funny to say that you're like president of some evil corporation, or you run a chocolate factory with Oompa Loompas, or whatever it is, like just have fun. And then they'll laugh and they'll ask you and you can answer for real. And then you go right back into what I talked about before. with just giving an interesting answer that has open loops and touches on like why you do what you do and not just what you do. But I just space it out with playfulness because people in bars, they just want to have fun.
Right.
Like the currency in a bar, it's fun. And if you can make people, anyone, guy, girl, the owner of the club, I don't care who it is, if they look at you and within 2 or 3 minutes, they're like, man, like having Kevin around is making my night more fun than before he got here.
Yeah.
Like they're going to want you around. And that's how you talk your way into places for free. That's how you end up with like all these ridiculous things occurring to you. It's just when people want you around because life is more fun and positive with you there than when you're not there.
Yeah, that's a great reminder. And most people go through their lives just completely bored out of their mind. I mean, most of their days are just it's just drudgery. And so if you can do just a little thing, it can go a long way in those situations. But I have an example of, it was actually what you just said about making up something goofy. This is back a couple of years ago, I went to, it was another networking event, and they were giving out these name tags, and you had to write down your occupation on the name tag, and it had to be color coordinated to whatever industry you're in. And, it was all kind of formal like that, and everybody's all like, oh, I'm a chiropractor and whatever. And so I get up there and I write down porn director. And I thought it was funny, and I'm like, this is going to get people to laugh. And so, but what happened was all the girls gave me the stink eye. Like, they were just like not talking to me. They're like, oh my God, I can't talk to this guy. And tons of guys were coming up to me going, dude, are you really? Is that serious?
Yeah.
So it was quite an entertaining night, but not in the way that I anticipated.
Yeah, I think then the two things there, I'm glad you brought that up. One is, context is everything. The jokes I make when I'm interviewing for like my mega fun job are far different than when I'm talking to a girl in a bar.
Yeah.
And like that is a huge thing is context. And the other thing is like believability of the joke and also the frame of the joke. So, I mean, this gets a little bit complicated, but like an example, not yours honestly wasn't as egregious as this, but like a lot of times people will, they'll make jokes about things they're insecure about and not in like a confident self-deprecating way, but in a like beat you to the punch way. So you'll have somebody who's heavy making jokes about their own weight or someone who's short making fun of their own height. And there's a way to do it in a way that makes you seem super confident, but there's a bit of like jokes are like Inception. And so if you're making jokes that are offensive or negative or anything like that, people might laugh, but they might take it as serious, right? So even the girls giving you the stink eye, like, probably didn't think you were actually a porn director.
Yeah.
But we're just judging, like, oh, like, how could he put something like that on his card? Versus if you had said, like, professional hopscotch player, my guess is much more reception. So the idea that, like, jokes give you license to do whatever you want, it's just, they can be a double-edged sword. And so it's important to think, like, what is this communicating? What is the frame of this joke? What's it going to make people think about me, basically? Yeah,
I even had a guy come up to me that night and say, oh, hey, I've got a buddy that's in the industry. You may know him.
Yeah.
Oh, it was a joke. I'm not actually in the industry.
Yep, and that goes back to before. So you always want to make sure your jokes eventually are understood as jokes.
Yeah.
So you can start subtle, but you want to eventually get to the point where no one is, like, walking away being like, oh, that Ben guy is the nicest stripper I've ever met. Like, that's bad. That means I failed somewhere along the way with communication.
Yeah, that's right. I want to talk a little bit about location independence. So
For sure.
You kind of told your story about how you were in the corporate world and then you just wanted to get out. What drove you to wanting to do something that you could just travel, go to Brazil with instead of just, kind of building a business in your town that you were in? Yeah,
so I've got to say credit, first of all, to Tim Ferriss and the 4-Hour Workweek. My business doesn't look anything like any business that he would build or recommend building in that book. But he really opened my eyes to that it was even possible. Right. Like if you had asked 21-year-old me, what do you think about you writing about and teaching coaching, like your biggest passion, while traveling anywhere in the world? I'm like, yeah, I'll ride my unicorn around. Like, sure, sounds good.
Yeah.
It just wasn't even in my realm of possibility. Like where I grew up was a suburb outside of Philadelphia. Like there are entrepreneurs, but they're all very location independent. My dad works in the steel industry, so there's factories and there's, office buildings. There's just you take 2 weeks vacation, right? Yeah. So his book was the first one where I was like, holy, like this is possible. And that was it. Once I knew it was possible, I knew I had to do it. The most fun times of my life are like living in Europe for 6 months when I was studying abroad, backpacking Asia in between banking and private equity for like 3 weeks. It was like maybe the best 3 weeks of my life up to that point.
Yeah.
I just knew, as soon as I knew it was possible, I knew I had to have it. And so then that's kind of why we moved to Rio instead of like staying in New York City and figuring out what to do there is because like I knew that's where I wanted to go eventually. So I figured, okay, I'll just go there right now and it will have to work itself out. And I just was willing to make that bet on myself and my co-founder that we would do it if we had to, if our backs were against the wall. So we just said, all right, let's burn the ships and let's go and do this because we knew that eventually we'd want a business that let us travel around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, what was your experience like in Brazil? How did you like it compared to where other places you've been?
So, oh my God, I love Brazil. Anyone that is thinking about doing any international travel, even if you have a 1-week vacation from your accounting job, sorry for all the accountants that just got offended, go to Rio de Janeiro. It is amazing. And Florianopolis and Belo Horizonte, all these amazing cities. Brazil, to me, is like just lights out perfect in so many ways. It has its downsides for sure, but the weather's amazing. In Rio, you have a beach and mountains like all over the place. It's just the most beautiful landscape. You can hang glide in the morning and by the afternoon be surfing. And the people are just unbelievable. Like they are so loving, so affectionate, so friendly. I was just blown away by the warmth of that culture. And coming from New York, where everybody walks with their cell phone in hand, texting, head down, walking quickly, you just go to Rio and like no one is doing that. They all are just interacting with whatever's in front of them. They smile big, they laugh loud. The people are just exactly the kind of culture that I want to surround myself with. So there was definitely some culture shock. And like, especially when it's your first time living in a new country for an extended period of time, it can be overwhelming at times, but it was just an incredible experience. Anyone that has the freedom to do it, I would highly suggest at least 6 months in one city, not bouncing around the world, 2 days in a city, 2 days in a city, kind of being like a culture vulture, you know, like someone just going from tourist attraction to tourist attraction. But really just pick a city that you connect with and put down roots. It is like truly, I mean, that will go down as like a highlight of my life. I have no doubt. Now,
did you learned Portuguese, I assume, when you got there? Or?
I did indeed. Not as well as I would like to. I'm not fluent. I don't know the words for like elbow or push-up, but definitely conversationally, if you don't speak English, we can jam for an hour and I'll be okay.
Okay, that's cool. That's good enough.
That was part of why I didn't want to go to, so like Australia, huge pull for me.
Right.
Sounds amazing. But for my first kind of foray, I wanted to pick somewhere that was a language I didn't know anything about. And Portuguese definitely was. And I struggled. You know, when I first got there, I couldn't speak a word. But you just learn it. You find friends that speak English and Portuguese, and over time they just phase out the English, and it frustrates you because you want them to just talk to you in the language you understand, but they won't, and you're better for it, you know? So that's part of the adventure, I think. That was part of the fun of it for me.
Yeah, and I'm sure you saved some money by not going to Australia. I was there a few years ago for a few months, and it is so expensive. It's way more than the U.S., like probably a lot more than New York City. Yeah, if you live in Sydney anyway.
Wow,
so,
I did not know that.
Yeah, nobody knows it. It's weird because you look at the Australian dollar versus the U.S. dollar, and it's usually somewhat close. But the problem is everything there is imported, so you have and they tax the hell out of everything. So you've just got everything just jacked up, and housing is ridiculously expensive, and pretty much nobody owns a house. Like you have to be really, really rich to own a house there in Sydney. So anyway, just a little side note. But I know Brazil isn't exactly cheap either. But
we were really tight between Rio and Bali, and Bali's amazing too. And I will definitely be getting there sometime in the next few years. And one of the big pros for Bali is it's just so much more affordable. But we're like, we'll go to Rio, we'll get Brazilian clients, we'll probably build a business around, the World Cup, and we'll make Brazilian reais, and that will cover the increased cost of living. And then we just didn't do any of that. And we built a business that's totally remote, that's basically like, it has nothing to do with where we're from. So definitely did not benefit from getting paid in a strong currency. But like I said, honestly, it was good. It just made us... The business just needed to grow, when you're in a city that's not, a $4,000 a year kind of cost of living, you have to build a real business. So I think there's benefits to kind of putting that pressure on yourself.
Yeah, I love that stuff. So now what brought you back to the U.S.?
Great question. So I get asked this a lot. I think there's a lot of answers. It was a hard decision for me, truthfully. I love Rio. Part of it was I was down there with 6 guys, so I didn't really get to tell the full tale But once Charlie and I decided that we wanted to go to Brazil, we just started effusively talking about it, how excited we were, how awesome it was going to be, blah, blah, blah. And we got a group of guys that like were also excited about it. And so we convinced a couple of guys to like drop out of college or quit their jobs and move down with us to start their own businesses. Mm-hmm. And those guys, there was a contingent of us that really wanted to get back to the U.S., I think specifically for business purposes, just to have the contacts, be able to fly to Austin. I mean, the last 2 weeks I've been in San Francisco, Boulder, New York. Like, it's just easier to get around.
Yeah.
So I was flying back for conferences and meetings from Rio maybe like once every 6 weeks. And so for business, a couple of the guys wanted to come back. Also, the World Cup is amazing if you're going down to Brazil for like a 1 week vacation. But to live there through it, you're just going to watch prices quadruple. And you're basically going to watch the city you love get overrun by drunk gringos, which is great for the drunk gringos. I'm sure people are going to have the time of their life. But like, I actually think it'll be more fun if I go back in February, let's say, for Carnival and get the same wild experience, but just with my Brazilian friends.
Yeah.
So it was partially World Cup, partially business, partially there is a mental drain of just being in another language all the time and being in a different culture.
Yeah.
So being able to just take off the weighted vest for a second and kind of operate where you can just have conversations with everyone around you and it's easy and you can save that mental. I'm a believer that like in a given day, you have a certain amount of like mental power and you can stretch you can like increase your maximum, but it still does get drained as you're constantly dealing with a new culture and a new language. So just coming back for like a brief kind of recharge. And then I'm going to definitely go back again. Like I will return to Rio for sure. And I want to check out Colombia and I want to check out Asia. So that was not like a permanent move so much as just a temporary recharge in the U.S. before hitting it again and going abroad.
Yeah, I totally get that recharge thing. Even if I'm gone, if I'm somewhere for 2 weeks and it's like a Spanish-speaking country where I'm constantly having to think, what do I say in Spanish?
Yeah.
I need that. Even, as good as I could get in that language, it's like, just want to get back and have things be a little bit easy for a while.
Yeah, I will say the most draining travel that I have had has been this last 2 weeks, though. Like, living out of a suitcase, moving cities every 3 days, because we're trying to figure out where to live, right?
Yeah.
So it's like Boulder, Austin, San Diego, Vegas, New York, San Fran. Like, that's been the most draining for me. I would definitely say to anyone who's really excited about being geographically independent, don't try to build your business while spending 3 days in each city.
Oh,
because, like, the airplane, the airport, the travel, the pack, the unpack, live out of a suitcase, like, it's really fun if it's your only goal in life. It's just to enjoy it. But when you're building a business at the same time, it is really helpful to have a routine, to have a morning routine and a co-working space and just, a place where you can get food. So for anyone that's like really amped up about geographic independence, it's like, I just want to see the whole world. I would say have phases in your life, have seasons in your life, and make the 3 day, 4 day, bam, 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 make that all about travel. And if you're trying to build a business concurrently, at least plant your roots for like a month or two, because that's when you'll really get to make progress on your business. That's what I've seen at least.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I've experienced the same thing as you. I go back to San Diego often because I have business there, and sometimes I'm there for 4 days or 3 days or something, and it's like all the things that I think I'm going to get done, like hardly any of them get done because I'm bouncing around and going to the airport, I'm trying to find, whatever, place to stay or visiting friends, whatever it is, and then pretty soon the 3 days are over, and yeah, so it's really tough. Are you leaning towards any city at this point to stick around for a while? Or?
Yeah, so in a shocking upset, so I came home to the U.S. thinking it was going to be San Diego. Like in my journal even,
really?
I have questions like, what was great about Rio? What do you wish you'd done differently about Rio? What does that mean for your next year in San Diego? Like it was the clear favorite. But I got to Las Vegas and I love it, man. Like Tony Hsieh is just crushing it with the downtown project. There's a lot of like really cool entrepreneurial stuff going on, like the leading ATM company for Bitcoin. There's just a bunch of like really cool stuff. And the nightlife's insane. For a guy who's like, I'm obviously I really love people. I love meeting people. If you know the right people in Las Vegas, you are going to have the time of your life. Like very quickly, even in our first week, it was like free VIP tickets to see Avicii at like the best club in Las Vegas. And it was like 5 days in. So I'm really excited to just see what that looks like when you're here for 3 months, 6 months. And it's also got, these are must-haves for me, but like great weather. I like the heat, although like I told you, my AC's busted, so it's tough right now. But I like the heat, and I really like the people. Truthfully, like I thought that Las Vegas was going to be kind of like LA, which I've never been to, but I hear is very focused on who do you know and money and, you know, celebrity status. But the locals in Vegas are actually like super friendly and like really down to just have you over to their house for food and have you like help you out however they can. And so, you know, between the people, the weather, the nightlife, the downtown project, it's just like really feels like home for us. So I think this is where we're going to plant roots for the time being.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, there's a guy named, you may or may not know him from the DC, named Richard Patey, who he's from the UK, and he was visiting last summer, and he ended up spending some time in Vegas, and he kind of had the same thing to say as you. He's like, yeah, this place is really amazing. It's a great place for entrepreneurs. I never thought of it like that either.
Oh, yeah, no, everybody I say, like, oh, yeah, I'm thinking about living in Vegas instead of San Diego. You just see in their head flashes of, like, hookers, cocaine, gambling, like
exactly.
Drug-addled Ben 3 months from now with, like, a needle out of his neck.
Yeah.
And I just have to be like, okay, hold on. Like, go Google the downtown project. Like, go look at, like, just a map of Vegas so you can see how small the Strip is compared to the rest, and then we'll have this conversation. Now, granted, the Strip's a huge plus. It's, like, the most amazing nightlife in the world, maybe. But you definitely do see, like, people just have flashbacks of The Hangover, and you kind of have to be like, listen, it's more than that. But at this point, like, I feel really good about it. I've seen enough about Vegas that I'm excited to be here. And what's great about my job is, like, if I ever decide that I want to go to San Diego instead, I just pay to get out of my lease and I move cities.
Yeah, and it's a 45-minute flight. I mean, that's the awesome thing. And it's like usually there's deals like all year round. So
totally. And actually a good friend of mine, Scott Britton, he runs a company called Lifelong Learner. He moved down to Brazil with me for the last year. And he, I think, is going to plant his flag in San Diego.
Cool.
But it's so cheap, it's so close that literally we're just like, listen, 3 out of every 4 weeks, I'll be here, and then once a month I'll go to San Diego, and then once a month he'll come here, and so we'll still be living with each other like almost half of the time that we're in the U.S.
Yeah.
But we'll just kind of be like, I don't know, time sharing, whatever it is. Like he'll have a couch with his name on it, I'll have a couch with my name on it. So it's so close. It's just easy to visit. Honestly, anyone. Like I just was in San Francisco, you know, to see Tony Robbins had an event there.
Yeah.
And it's an hour and a half away. You just go Virgin Airlines. You're there. It's cheap. It's easy. So like. It's definitely a really easy place to fly out of. And what's cool, too, is, like, people all over the world are coming to me. I've had people blowing me up since I've said I'm here, just being like, oh, my God. And because it's my home court, there's guys who, they could be big shot dudes, but when they come in, like, I can help them have a way better experience because of who I know here. So it's been a great way to even expand who I know.
Yeah, that's not too horrible a place to be, it sounds like.
Yeah, no, I'm psyched about it.
Yeah, cool. So we'll switch a topic. A big question that I always want to ask people that are location independent, especially single guys, what are your personal relationship goals and how do you kind of fit that into your lifestyle?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think definitely loneliness can be a factor if you're going to go geographically independent. I've been fortunate not to have to deal with it because of a few things. One is, you know, I'm always meeting people. Like I love meeting people, and the skill set that I've built just makes it very easy for me to like go to a jiu-jitsu class and walk out with like 3 guys that I'm going to meet up with the next day to watch a game. You know, it's just like you have to put yourself into social situations. Go to events. If you're more on the shy side, go to events specifically for new people in the city. You know, maybe, you know, a jiu-jitsu or a bar is not your scene. Go somewhere that's meant for people to meet new people, but put yourself out there. 2 is bring a group. You know, I went down to Brazil with 5 guys very quickly. You know, everyone knew I was going. So I got introduced to another couple of guys who become some of my best friends who still live down there. And then when I moved to Vegas, like I'm moving with 4 of the 5 guys I lived with in Brazil are coming here. So if you travel with a group, it's different than a romantic relationship, which I'll touch on. But if you travel with a group of people that are like-minded people, you're rowing the same boat, the same direction, like you can just get rid of that. It's like a classic example of, you know, I was at the Great Wall of China and I was alone. And I was at Machu Picchu and I was alone. And I realized that these experiences are worthless if you're not sharing them with someone. And that's totally true. Yeah. But like the answer isn't to not have the experiences. The answer is to go find a group of like-minded people and then bring them with you to have those amazing experiences together. So that's kind of how you avoid the biggest downside, I think, of location independence, which is non-continuous relationships.
Yeah.
You can think of loneliness or whatever it is, but basically going down, making a great group of friends, 6 months later leaving. That'll wear on you. But if you have continuity and you have a group of people that you can amass that you just attract to you by wearing what you're about on your sleeve and saying, this is the kind of life I want to live, who's with me, then you get continuity and new friends and to travel. And for me, it's been amazing. In terms of romantic relationships, really, I mean, you only have two options, right? One is find a man or a woman who's in that group, who's like-minded, who wants to travel and is willing to do the adventure with you. Or two, go long distance, right? I'm not going to say it's easy. Like, there is a girl that I was in love with when I was in Brazil, and we're still in contact. And, obviously I miss her, but she's going to go be a doctor. And so she's got to stay where she is. And, I'm going to travel. And so we have, the relationship is basically just a friend one of, if you're ever in the same city, you better let me know. But it just doesn't work out with our lives, and that's hard. But you have to decide what's worth it to you, right? And to me, having this life is so rewarding. It makes me grow. It allows me to travel, and it allows me to make new connections and become much more thoughtful in how I view the world. I'm not ready to stop that and pick a city. So it's either you got to find somebody who's willing to do the journey with you, or you make these connections and that person's still around, right? And maybe, she'll meet somebody who she ends up dating and our relationship can no longer be a sexual one. But for no matter what, when I go back to Rio, she's getting a call, right? Because that's someone who will always be important to me in my life. So if you do it the right way, I've never really felt any pangs of loneliness or any kind of depression or sadness around, not having, human connection, which to me, obviously, is my whole business is based on the most important thing in the world are your human connections, your relationships. They're the key to your happiness. They're the key to your success. I defy you to find a happy person or a quote unquote successful person who doesn't have strong relationships that help him in that endeavor or her in that endeavor. So I'm all about human relationships. I just don't think you have to sacrifice on them by being geographically independent, as long as you do it in a way that just be thoughtful about it and really make them a priority.
Yeah, definitely. So what about long term? Are you thinking at some point I'm going to settle down and I'm going to have a wife and I'm going to have kids and that kind of thing? Or are you just kind of living more in the present and just letting that kind of be for now?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a great question. The truth is, 10 years ago, when I was, 16, if you had asked me what's life going to be like at 26, I would have whiffed on every single thing. City, where I'm, who I'm with, what I'm doing. I would have just missed terribly. So I just have accepted that I have no idea what 10 years from now is going to look like. So could be anything in the world, right? Could be a white picket fence house in Connecticut while I'm commuting to my job in New York City. I highly, highly doubt it, but I wouldn't bet my life on that there's a 0% chance, because you just don't know what happens in 10 years. Where I'm at today, I'm not really looking for my soulmate. I actually don't believe in soulmate. I believe that there's a lot of people in the world, and of those people, there's probably a lot that I could connect with. And so I'm not hunting down my wife, and I don't stress about, what will this lifestyle mean? Because if I ever do decide that my number one priority is to get married and have kids, I think I could do it fairly easily. And I think that that's based on just, one, a lot of experience with people and looking at my past relationships and how they've gone well and could have gone that direction if I had wanted it. So I don't feel like I'm all of a sudden going to just be alone forever. But the truth is, too, right now I don't want kids. I'm really glad I don't have them.
Yeah.
And as long as I keep feeling that way, I'll keep living the way I am. And the second that I decide that I'd be happier living a different way, I'll start taking action to move in that direction. So it's not blindly living in the present. It's just giving myself permission to be who I am today, and also permission to change in the future if that's what happens,
Yeah, that totally makes sense. One other thing I forgot to ask you about your business. So you're kind of just starting out. I mean, you said you're less than a year in, basically. Yeah. How are you getting the word out, or how did you start getting the word out? I noticed you did have quite a few comments on some of your blog posts. You're obviously getting traffic.
Yeah.
How did that all happen?
So when we started, we were terrible business people, honestly. I would say our, being charismatic, skill number one, very close second, helping other people become charismatic, super distant third, running an internet-based business. So at first, we were just a blog and a little button on top that said coaching. And we just got the word out by writing stuff and putting it anywhere we could. So Reddit, Stumble Upon, There was a couple of articles we had that got popular enough that Thought Catalog picked them up. But we were really just saying, like, let's produce content, let's put it around, and let's hope people like it. And that worked, actually, decently well. Like, we brought in clients, we wrote a book and had some book sales. So, like, it wasn't really a genius system. Then we kind of got more systematic about, like, going to things like South by Southwest and meeting people and, getting exposure to people by getting on podcasts and things like that, really being a bit more proactive. So we've done a lot of guest posts. We write for Huffington Post, Under 30 CEO, things like that. We do podcasts anytime we get the invitation. And we're really just very open about, it's not an original model, but just give away a bunch of really good content and people will decide they want more. That's kind of our model at its core. So yeah, YouTube and things like that, that's a new area we're getting into, but it's really all based on free content leads to true fans. And if they like you, then they'll want to interact with you more. And I'd say, like, all the people in our Charisma University, like, we sold it out in 4 days. And that's not because we're awesome at writing sales copy. Like, Truthfully, a professional would probably look at that and be like, this is not that good. But we just had enough people who wanted to get more interaction with us because they've been following us for a long time. And that's kind of how we built the business.
Cool. Now, what are your plans, your future plans? You're going to stay in Vegas and keep building the business?
Yeah, so for now, like I said, I don't like to bounce around. I really like to kind of plant roots. So we signed a year-long lease, and that's the plan. Now, granted, the good thing about those leases, you can always just get out of them if you need to, but that's the plan. And that's to stay here, really get involved in downtown projects and meet the entrepreneurs here and keep building out the business. And I don't know that we'll really ever build like a lot of in-person stuff. I really like keeping it all kind of on the internet because you get to work with people in Australia and England and things like that. But I think that we'll just be doing more conferences. We'll just be getting out there more and continuing to kind of do what we've been doing and try to keep growing. I mean, that's really, I like the formula. It's working. We can support ourselves by what we're doing. And so the idea is just to double down on it and really keep the momentum going.
Awesome. Well, Ben, it's been awesome having you on. I really enjoyed our conversation. I got a lot out of it. I'm sure that people listening will as well. And again, your website is charismaoncommand.com if anybody wants more information. And thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Shoot me when it's up. I'll get in the comments if people have more questions. My email is ben@charismaoncommand.com. It's not very clever. If people want to ask more about Brazil or what it's like to be location independent or charisma, whatever it is. But yeah, this was fun. I really enjoyed it. So thanks for having me on.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Freedom Lovin' Podcast. If you like this show, please give us a rating and review in iTunes. It'd be much appreciated, and I will read that on the next show. You will be taken out here with the newest song by Silver Sun Pickups called Cannibal. Have a great week.